This is an emergency alert. We are now seeing a U.S. Air Force insider turn into a whistleblower and expose what's going on right now inside our U.S. military and our U.S. government. They're confirming the worst is happening right now, right? So let's get into the details here really quick, guys. Please just hit it up for me down there. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. It helps. And I'm posting multiple videos a day, keeping you guys updated on this big news. All right, so let's get into this here. All right, we just had a whistleblower, a insider from the U.S. Air Force come out and issue a major warning. This is a bioenvironmental engineer in the U.S. Air Force, and they actually resigned and became a whistleblower and exposed what they were doing inside the U.S. military, all right, and these programs, because they said that they signed up to prevent this from happening, and then the exact thing they were trying to prevent from happening, they were actually facilitating, right? So they had to step aside, and now they're blowing the whistle, right? So let's get into this here. This is U.S. Air Force veteran Kristen Meghan, all right? She is a former bioenvironmental engineer in the U.S. Air Force, and this is what she has to say. I want you guys to listen really quick. This is bombshell, what she's about to warn you of.
Kristen Meghan, she's a military veteran, right?
Yes, I was in the U.S. Air Force for 9 years.
Wow. And you came out and blew the whistle on geoengineering, things that you witnessed were going on. Can you give us the real nutshell?
Absolutely. Basically, I had heard of what many people know as the term chemtrails. And I worked in a job called bioenvironmental engineering, and I thought that was insane. And why would we do something like that? Modify the weather by using hazardous materials in our atmosphere. So, and actually the process of trying to debunk it or disprove it, I realized it was actually coming right out of my office, as I was one of the people that was approving the chemicals. And it really shook the core of my oath. And I did a lot of sampling, did a lot of investigation, and I blew the whistle and I got out. And I've now used my credentials, my oath, and my powers for good to help people understand it's very real. It's now openly admitted. There are multiple forms of weather modification. I specifically found the one of stratospheric aerosol injection. And collectively around the globe, we have to understand that it is now being admitted because they're saying it's combating climate change. Well, the climate change we need to be worried about is man-made climate engineering, also known as geoengineering.
And when you say you had chemicals being pumped into the air, what kind of chemicals are they putting out that rain down on humanity, basically?
Nanoparticulate metals, like you had different sulfates and barium and strontium. I know it's probably changed over time. I know they use silver iodide for certain things, but these are the odd part of it was the quantities that I saw them coming in, the form that they were coming in, and it's the same type of materials that I was trying to engineer out of the workplace to substitute with safer materials. And when you notice that what's called the safety data sheet, the information about a chemical of what personal protective equipment to wear, how do you dispose of it, how do you pack it to ship it. When key information is missing, I ask questions, and my questions led to demonization, and I knew I found something I shouldn't have.
That's insane. So these metals are basically toxic for the humans, I would presume, or?
Yes, because it also has aluminum, and a lot of people will tell you, well, these things aren't horrible in small quantities. It's not small quantities, because when you are putting things above us, the dissipation rates are dependent on weather and climate, but it's getting into the food, it's getting into the soil. And around the world, these wastewater treatment plants, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, or these toxicants is what they're called, they are not able to filter them out. So if you're growing organic food, are we going to go back to the plexiglass barriers on our plants? I mean, it's horrible. That's why you can ban it anywhere. We've had states in the United States ban it, and that is great to get the ball rolling. But people really need to wake up to it, irrespective of any political party. It's not okay. And you're seeing a huge increase in neurodegenerative issues like Alzheimer's. It's really difficult for people with respiratory issues and asthma. And people are wondering why they have allergies 24/7, 365.
And I liked what you said about that climate change, or the the change we experience in weather, often we can't disconnect that from these geoengineering activities. Do you want to say something more about that? I mean, how do we feel that? Is there proof or so that is definitely coming from that?
Yes, there are places that openly admitted it. Remember Dubai? And then when people got upset, they retracted it, but the can was already opened. And the issue is, I know this sounds silly, but when you watch movies with time change, they say if you do something and something changes, it changes the ripple throughout time. If you are modifying the weather, you are messing with Mother Nature. And meteorology is a very, very thorough study. And I do know a lot of it because of my profession of plotting hazards. But it does not make sense when you are altering nature where things are not naturally supposed to occur. We had massive flooding in California, and we have a system called HARP that is in the United States. And the same people who demonized me 5-10 years ago are now going, wow, because they're finding it's openly admitted in all of our U.S. documents. The U.S. is absolutely not the only country doing it.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, thank you very much for coming out on that and letting humanity know what's going on. Thank you so much, Meghan.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so you heard that. That was Kristen Meghan, former U.S. Air Force bioenvironmental engineer. All right, and she was blowing the whistle on these programs that we know exist. I wanted to show this really quick. This is a picture that was created by CNN, right? A graphic showing the different forms, 3 techniques to dim the sun: stratospheric aerosol injection, marine cloud brightening, cirrus cloud thinning. There's also cloud seeding and a lot of other programs going on as well, okay? And this is potentially triggering things like this, okay? Torrential rains trigger flash flooding in New Mexico village devastated by deadly wildfires, all right? This is Ruidoso, and you can see this is wild, all right? This is wild. I'm not saying this was, but it could be. These floods keep happening over and over and over. We keep getting these 100-year floods at the same time that we have these geoengineering programs. We just had a massive hurricane that did a bunch of wild things. It was a Cat 5, and then it avoided Mexico, and it went to Texas, right? Wild things are happening. Not saying that is what happened, but the possibilities are there. I want you to look at this. Look at this garage in the background. You see that? Right? Now look at it. Garage is gone, washed out from the flood. All right, look at that one in the background with the red roof past the stop sign. Gone now. Gone from this flash flooding. This stuff is crazy. All right, this is in Ruidoso, New Mexico. All right, and there actually is a HARP antenna array in New Mexico. Okay, there's multiple different ones all across the world in the country. There's not just ones in Alaska. They have auroral antenna research programs that interact with the ionosphere, okay, by sending high-powered radio waves into the ionosphere, heating it and ionizing the gases, very similar to what the sun does to our ionosphere, okay, which is the layer of the atmosphere that interacts directly with the sun, the layer of gases that interacts directly with radiation. That's why we get auroras. When we get these lights in the sky, that's the gases being ionized, okay? And they can do very similar things with things like HARP. This whistleblower even mentioned it, all right? I wish they let her go a little bit more in depth onto HARP. I thought she was about to get into it, and then they cut the interview short after 4 minutes, all right? But they have arrays in Alaska. They have them in New Mexico. They have multiple ones throughout the country and throughout the world. Russia has one. China has one. Every major country has their own auroral research program, all right? And it's potentially contributing to things like this, okay? Because if you heard what she said, they spray things like silver iodide and also metals. Okay, silver is a metal. It's actually the most electrically conductive metal, even more than gold. Look it up, right? I always have people arguing with me on this point. It's true. Silver is actually more conductive than gold, okay? And doesn't mean it's more valuable, but it's more electrically conductive. And they spray silver iodide into the atmosphere for cloud seeding, okay? And potentially that silver and those metals are reacting to the electromagnetic radiation that is being bombarded through the atmosphere with these projects like HARP, okay? These high-powered antenna arrays. And they have antennas all over the place, okay? They have radars, weather radars, and they also have cell phone towers as well. So all these things can potentially mimic very similar effects too. I'm not saying that's exactly what's causing it, but these things are real. And this person worked on these programs and she's saying it's real. And she made the chemicals for the research programs, right? And you can see here's a little update for Beryl, right? It is going through Michigan right now, okay? And Toronto, upstate New York, parts of New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine are all getting some of it. And there were actually record-breaking amounts of tornado warnings last night. There were so many that I was looking through. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of tornado warnings that were issued last night. I was warning you guys last night too. Got to be on the lookout throughout the night. Have these alerts on your phone ready. And there were dozens of them all throughout Kentucky and Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. I saw dozens, Tennessee, dozens and dozens of tornado warnings. There were so many. I was going to show some, but then I just kept scrolling and I couldn't even get through all of them. The past 24 hours, I saw at least 100 of them before I even got to 24 hours back. Okay, there were so many, and I was even reading that they think it broke the record potentially for the amount of tornado warnings issued. Right? There's still, I just saw people speculating that that's what it's going to be. Right? So please hit it up for me down there, guys, to help get these warnings out so people know what's going on in our country. Right? This Air Force whistleblower doesn't have to let this be known. Right? She doesn't have to risk herself like this. She could just keep doing her job and keep getting paid and get her benefits and everything else. That's what everyone else does. And that's the problem. That's the biggest problem, is nobody wants to say anything because everyone's worried. Right? Nobody wants to say anything. So when people do say stuff like this, we have to support them. Right? And we have to acknowledge what they're really doing. Right? So kudos to her, hats off to her, right? It's brave and it's hard because people think you're crazy or something when you just tell them what you did for your job, right? This is what she did for 9 years. And you just tell someone, hey, this was my job for 9 years. And they're like, all right, crazy person, crazy man. It's like, no, this is a real program. It happens all the time and it's happening over your head constantly. Okay, and almost every state in the country has their own weather modification program as well, their own geoengineering program as well, cloud seeding program. Almost every single state. Just look it up, whatever state you want. Look up Texas weather modification, any state you want. They all have weather modification programs. All right, so thank you guys. I hope you guys are getting ready and getting prepared on your homestead, because we could see some big event like this that could shut things down for you, right? Look at what's happening in Texas right now. almost 3 million people did not have power. The situation's getting better, right? But all those people, all their food went bad, right? Their fridge is bad. All the restaurants are closed. Everything's closed. So if you didn't have preps, if you didn't have canned food, rice, water jugs, like I tell you, gas cans, a generator, if you didn't have some chickens, all right, I got dozens of chickens over here I'm looking at while I make this video. And by the way, you can check out my homestead channel down below. I'll link that for you guys down below. I just posted a new video on there yesterday, so you guys can check out what I'm doing on my homestead. It's just homestead content, no breaking news or anything. But I have dozens and dozens of chickens that we're working on different breeds. We're going to start hatching them out soon for some meat birds, right? We're going to get an incubator soon. All this stuff, working on this stuff with my son and my kids. They love it, right? That's what you need to be working on right now. And even that, though, is subject to this cloud seeding and these chemicals that are being released that falls down on your food. That's what she was even saying. Oh, you want to eat organic and all this? Well, you better put it under plexiglass, because it's being rained down with these chemicals. It's getting in the food supply. It's getting in the air. It's getting in the water. It's getting in the plants. The animals that you eat, they're filled with this stuff. You're filled with it. It's everywhere. It's everywhere, right? And we already have to deal with enough. There's already things like microplastics everywhere. Those are showing up all over the place, all over your food, all over the human body. Right? We already have to deal with enough things, and then we are intentionally releasing chemicals as well into the environment, right? And these can even affect things all the way down to a microbiology level, right? To a very small level, where things like silver actually disrupts aquatic life, okay, and bacteria. I've done whole videos on this, where once there's a certain accumulation of silver in an environment, it starts killing off all the microbacteria in the water, in the soil. It starts killing it all off, which are the baseline of all life on Earth, okay? Because without those microbes in the soil, then the plants don't get any food, because those microbes eat all the things and break it down. Everything that touches the dirt, the microbes break it down, and then they essentially poop it out, and that becomes soil. That becomes humus, compost, whatever you want to call it. That's how stuff's broken down. Your compost pile. You throw all the food in, then it's nice compost 6 months later. That's from the microbes breaking it down, turn it into nice stuff for you. That's what they do with the soil for the plants as well. They break down all the leaves, turn it into soil. If the microbes aren't there, then that process where the plants get their food naturally stops, right? The nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, all these different cycles stop. Nitrogen cycle is critical for plants. It's one of the main elements, one of the main things that plants need, nitrogen. And it's based off of these microbes breaking down things in the soil and absorbing nitrogen from the air and breaking it down and making it available in the soil for plants. All right, so my point is that once these microbes get too much silver in their environment, because silver is actually, you ever heard of colloidal silver? It actually is a sterilant. So it sterilizes wounds, cuts, infections. So is iodine. I put iodine on everything. Anytime I have a cut or my kids have a cut or anything, we don't use like Neosporin or anything like that. We just use iodine, because that actually, it's a natural element your body needs and absorbs readily, right? You need iodine for your thyroid, and it's actually linked to higher IQ, especially in children. Go look this up. It's linked to 10 to 15 point IQ increase in children and even some adults, okay? When they have an iodine deficiency and then they don't anymore, it can bring their IQ up 10 to 15 points. Okay, so maybe you have an iodine deficiency, your kid does, or your grandkid does, or something. If something's wrong, I'm not saying that is, but there's been studies on that. That's totally proven, and that's why we put iodine on everything. Anytime there's a cut or anything like that, and your body can flush it out pretty easily. Your thyroid will saturate and absorb most of it, and then the rest of it just gets flushed out, right? So you can handle iodine, but you can't really handle silver. People that use too much colloidal silver, or they drink it. There's this guy, he turned completely blue, right? He has blue skin. Go look up the silver man, colloidal silver man, right? He has blue skin, and it's from too much silver, right? So silver is not very natural. That's my point. It's obviously natural, but it's not natural to have it in high quantities spread out through the environment, and especially nanoparticles as well that can even potentially penetrate blood-brain barriers, things like that, and are almost impossible to filter out as well. All right, so thank you guys. Hope you guys have big blessings. Please just hit it up for me down there, guys. It helps to get these warnings out. People need to know what's going on. There's no consent to this, and we need to say we don't want this. We need to say no, we don't want this. And then step 2 is these people that are getting flooded. I've been saying this for a couple years now, and I've given dozens of specific examples of cloud seeding happening and then these storms happening as well, right? One happened in Santa Barbara County, California, just a year and a half ago, okay? And they admitted they cloud seeded a bomb cyclone in Santa Barbara County, California. Remember that bomb cyclone that hit? There was a ton of flooding in California. They cloud seeded that system. They admitted it. Shown the documents on here many times. Okay, so that's the key though. Find out the program. If you're damaged from this, you have flooding from this, see if there's a program. See when they do it. A lot of times they have logs too. We cloud seeded on this day at this time. We did this program. They log all this stuff. You can get this stuff. You can FOIA it. A lot of times they just post it on their website. All right. Get these documents and start and put pressure and saying, we think you're doing this. This is what they did in Australia a few years ago. And they had to actually stop cloud seeding in certain jurisdictions and stuff because people were freaking out because they were saying you were cloud seeding right before they let everyone know, and then there was a massive flood a day or two later destroying hundreds of homes. Right, it happened in Australia just a few years ago. So that's the key. Find the documents for your area that you're affected and put pressure on. Do whatever you need to do. Take this all the way to the top if you need to, and force them to stop this cloud seeding in your area. That's how we do it. That's how it's going to happen, because they're not just going to stop doing it. All right, there's got to be pressure put on to say, hey, there's going to be liability. If you keep doing this, then you're going to have to pay for these damages. All right, that's the only time. It's the only way anyone. That's the only language that's really spoken. Is money and power. All right, that's how things get done. That's just reality. That's just how the world works. That's how most of the world works. I know we want it to be, about other things that are better than that, but that's pretty much how it works. So at the end of the day, is money and power, and you have to put pressure on them to say, hey, we're gonna try to sue you and take your money if you cloud seed and we have this flooding. Right, we need some type of damages from this. Right, then maybe they'll stop doing it. If all these counties and states are just paying out millions of dollars every year for these cloud seeding damage funds, or they'll just do that. They'll just have a fund for it and say, hey, take your check. But most likely they will stop, right? Because they've been doing this in open secrecy for decades. So thank you guys, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.